Hi, and welcome to my Facebook Live and Any Mum Can podcast live. I have a fabulous guest with me this evening, and it is Elnette Parsons, and she is here to talk about healthy cooking and creative lunchbox creations, not just for children, I hope. I think we all need some inspiration for our lunchboxes so that we're eating healthy and really thinking about what we're putting in our bodies. So welcome, Elnette. I'm really pleased to have you with me this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here. A little bit
Oh.
nerve-wracking, but yes, excited.
So, Elnette, you are a nutritionist, I believe, who uses science-based mechanism and tools to help people on their health journey and weight loss journey. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I use a program called the Metabolic Balance Diet Program, where you take your full blood work, and based on that, you get worked out a diet plan that goes with your blood at that moment in time. So it can actually change. If you do the blood at different times, you can actually be recommended different food types. So it all depends on your state at that moment in time. So it's very personalized and very tailored to your specific needs, and it take into consideration your medical history and anything like that.
That's fantastic. Amazing. And you also have written a book on cooking, I understand.
Yes, so my book, Fun Feasts for Lunchboxes, are available on the 30th of September. So it is literally going off to the printers as we speak. And it's a book that's giving people ideas of what you can put in your kids' lunchbox. I hate a sandwich. I really don't like sandwiches. I love bread, freshly baked bread, that I will devour, but I just can't stand a sandwich for lunch. I just got so bored making them all the time, and it doesn't fill the kids up. And I did lots of research, and I really got inspired by another nutritionist, Jenny Tishi, the Lunchbox doctor. And she wasn't, I mean, you might know of her, and such an advocate for lunchboxes. And through her, I learned about the little thermos flasks. So my kids just get cooked food into school every single day, with their snacks and everything else that goes with it. And I just really put it out there, and people really were quite interested by it and wanted to know what I'm doing. And it's really simple things, and inspired me, said, why don't you write a book? Why didn't you write a book? I said, okay, I'll write a book. And so it's just really ordinary food that I've made healthier. So I've made substitutes for ingredients and then just put it together in a book with suggestions of how to have a balanced lunchbox every day.
Fantastic. So can you give us an idea, like what things do you cook up for your children to
Okay.
take to school?
So I absolutely love normal food, good old food that we've grown up on. But through the years, obviously, the industry has gone and changed all those things and added lots of sugar and preservatives to it. So I've gone back to like using, say, a pizza, and I've just made it healthier. So I am an absolute lover of spelt flour. Absolutely love it, and it's very close to. It's not like bread flour, but it's not completely like cake flour. So it's an in between texture, but it's got this really nutty flavor, and obviously it's ancient grain, so it's really good for you. So pizza, my kids get in pizza. I batch cook all my food, then stack it in the freezer, and then every night just take it out. So they get pizzas, they get sausages and mash, they get soup and bread. I bake the bread. They get chicken rolls, stuffed chicken breast, lasagna, chili con carne, spaghetti bolognese, chicken pie. I mean, anything really, just normal food. But I've made it healthier. And snacks, the thing with the snacks are they would always come and say, Mama, oh, I also want a biscuit or a chocolate or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm not giving you those things. It's not lunch. But I then, obviously, they're on the school playground. I rather want to give them something that comes out of my kitchen than what instead of buying something at the tuck shop or at the supermarket. So things like beetroot muffins, dark chocolate beetroot muffins, chocolate mousse, cereal bars, flapjacks, everything that I can just make healthier. So I feel much better sending them that to school. And they're not that hungry when they come home then. They used to raid the kitchen when they got home from school after a sandwich. Now they really have a cooked meal for lunch as well, and they're growing children. They need all the energy, and they're not that hungry.
Fantastic. And how does this translate for you and for an adult? Like, you'd still do the same sort of things if you know, if you're at the office or going out and you're not at home all the time, would you do the same sort of things?
Yes, I mean, you can obviously, most adults we don't need as many carbs as children. So you can adapt it. So let's say, for instance, I've got spaghetti bolognese, but I've made this one courgette bolognese. So you can just substitute and make it more suitable to you as an adult. I mean, I think the biggest thing that people don't realize is that they can actually put anything in a flask. That's what I've learned. People don't know that they can put something in a flask. And it doesn't really matter what it looks like when it goes in, because in your tummy, it's going all, it doesn't stay intact there anyhow. So it doesn't really matter. But it's really nice having some hot food at lunchtime.
And so do all your lunchboxes orientate around warm foods, or is there a variety of other things that mix up
there's
to it?
A couple of obviously the pizza is cold. I've got some quiche in there. I do have a sort of a sandwich, not really a sandwich. I've got like pita pockets, so that's cold. What else do I have cold? There is frittata. Yeah, so there's a couple of cold things in there, and then I've got dips and snacks in there, so various hummuses, cheese strings, biscuits, that type of thing.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So what took you to like transition from being the nutritionist you are and in the interest of science, and then all of a sudden because you love cooking, I know you've done cooking videos, and then now doing lunchboxes. What kind of made you do that thing of going into cooking?
So oh my goodness, I think I've always been surrounded by food. My mum is 70, and I've just spoken to her this week, and she's doing 2 weddings. She's catering 2 weddings in the next couple of months. And I'm like, oh my goodness, really? Do you really need to do this? So I've always been surrounded by food. And my granny was a really good cook and catered for function and things. And she made wedding cakes and all sorts. So I've always been around food and can remember going to venues when my mum was catering for weddings and things. So just grown up around all of this. So I've always been a cook, and I can say I'm a good cook. I've learned, I'm very comfortable in the kitchen, and it's quite, when you finish there with something, the satisfaction is quite satisfactory to make something and then look at it and see it's wholesome, but you've also produced it and it comes out of your kitchen. I mean, I do, like anything else, sometimes I don't feel like cooking, but then I can say to the kids, you can make supper tonight. And then they're normally quite eager to do that. So that's
so you're passing it on then.
Yes, I do. And I mean, I'm really lucky. Even the boys, they really love cooking. I'm never worried about them. I mean, my kids get up in the morning and they make their own breakfast. They fry themselves an egg or make porridge or whatever they want. And they can look after themselves, because, I mean, it's not as if they're in the kitchen cooking every single night, but the mere fact that they're surrounded by it and they learn and they see. And I do say to them, tonight, why don't you cook tonight? Or you can look after yourself. And they're very self-sufficient. So I think it's that thing of you learn by seeing and by following an example.
Absolutely. But it's good that, I think it's also the interest too, because I don't think, I can say I've been surrounded by food and cooking. My mum cooks for the temple. She does trays and trays of food that we do offerings at the temple, and many things. And she's 73, but I'm one of 4 and I'm the youngest of 4. And so I really didn't get a look in the kitchen because the kitchen was very small. So I was quite late to the party to learn to cook, to do any traditional foods. And my turning point was when I was pregnant with my daughter, my first child. And I realized, I thought, well, actually, I've probably got away with not needing to cook until right now. And I was 28, 29. And then I just realized that that's it. I want to learn to cook because, it's not just me now. So I think I leaned into my experience growing up of what kind of foods I want to bring and I want that my children's palate to grow to. But I didn't naturally have the interest. I think the kitchen was just too crowded, too many cooks in one small space. And but I eventually came around to it, and I enjoy it now. But I can say at the beginning, I found it challenging. I mean, Asian food is quite a lot of ingredients to get your head around, and everything just looked the same and sounded the same because I took no interest when I was younger. But some 10-15 years later, I don't know what I was flapping about because I'm all right with it all now. But at the time it was very, very alien.
But the thing about cooking is, if you really want to, then it is something that anyone can do. It's really following a procedure. I mean, obviously, it's a little bit different for some people, it come more natural because they've maybe exposed to it more. But anyone can learn to cook and then develop their own style. But sometimes, I guess, circumstances sort of force people to get into the kitchen and start looking for alternatives and how they could feed themselves, looking at their circumstances and what they can do. I mean, I've always loved cooking, always cooked from scratch, but my husband was in a wakeboard accident in 2014, and he had a brain injury. So obviously the brain is really, really complicated, and they can't do anything for the brain. And he obviously had lots of issues. He had to learn to walk again, all sorts of things that he had to do. And really, with supplements and good food, that's how we got him better, because there is no medication. So if I didn't use those, I had that knowledge to help him, and I think that just made me more determined to get my kids to eat more healthier and to look after their lunch boxes. Because I mean, being in a school and a teacher myself, after lunch and break, you can see a clear difference in kids' behavior. And you can see some of them just after lunch, they just drift off. And you ask them what they've eaten, and when they list the things that they've eaten, you're like, no wonder that is happening. So I think, like for you, something put you in that position, eventuality, which is brilliant. And then there's so many avenues and so many ways that you can learn. And I'm quite sure if you ask your mom now, she's more than happy to have you in the kitchen. And you.
Oh yeah. And she loves me ringing and asking.
Yeah. So
what top tips? What top tips would you give then to encourage, like, to make cooking as nutritional and healthy as possible?
I would say use ingredients and things that you can buy easily and that you can pronounce. If you can't pronounce the name, then you need to think, no, that's not something that is really natural and unprocessed. So just keep it simple. Batch cook, that helps so much to batch cook. I mean, I know people sometimes need freezer space, but if you can cook and keep food for at least 2 or 3 days in the fridge. So batch cooking, keep it simple. Cook food that your children like. or that the people in your house like. It's trial and error. And it is time consuming, but for me, it is like, if you think Brussels sprouts, I mean, that's not something that many people like, because we are just learned to eat it one way. Try and make something in a different way, and then they have a completely, people might like something. So I know with my kids, they're not over keen, or we don't eat a lot of Brussels sprouts, but if I do it with a little bit of bacon and onions and roast it in the oven, it changes completely in taste and texture, and they actually quite like that then. So it's really finding the things that people in your household likes to eat. If eating is an enjoyable experience, and it shouldn't be a punishment. So do trial and error and figure out what they like to eat. And if there is like a type of junk food that they really, really love, try and recreate it. So I make schnitzels or chicken, nuggets. My kids love them, but I refuse to buy them. So we make them, and they can now do it themselves. It's so easy. It's really it's just finding what people love, and if you start with that, and then also if you get your kids to help you cook, they normally want to eat the things that they've made because they're proud of what they've done. So picky eaters, instead of making a new dish every time until they eat something in the evening, I'm a little bit old school there, but it really does work. If you're hungry, you're going to eat. So just expose them to new things on a regular basis, and eventually they'll get used to it.
That's really, yeah. I do agree, because you just got to keep presenting the same things and see, and eventually they'll try it. So, but what do you do about, because if you do have picky eaters and they don't want to eat certain things, do you just keep presenting the same foods? Well, how do you work around?
Well, it really depends on how adverse a child is to something. So if I give you an example of my daughter, she never liked mashed potato, even from a baby. The moment I put it in her mouth, she just threw up, and she is now 15. She doesn't like mash. So in that case, I'm really not going to force a child to eat. So when I make sausages and mash, I'm not making her another dish. I just take the potatoes out, because she will eat a potato without it being mashed, strangely. Yeah. So I just take that out. But if a child just say, I don't eat vegetables, I mean, that's nonsense. Who doesn't eat vegetables? You just introduce, I would do like not vegetables with a very strong flavor. I will do something that has quite not bland, but more neutral. Then I wouldn't go, if someone doesn't eat, I wouldn't give a child Brussels sprouts to start with. And conceal it. You can start concealing it, like you can in a curry or in a bolognese, if you grate it in. Mushrooms, if you cut it really, 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 really small, they won't even know.
Good idea. I like those tips. And have you found, because we're talking about cooking, using different vegetables and doing things to encourage children, but generally, outside of like looking after the children, but actually just generally looking after our health, have you found there are many people that don't cook from scratch?
Yes, there are lots of people that don't cook from scratch, loads. And I think it's because of our busy lifestyles, and people just don't have time. And that is a really true statement. I don't have time, but I prioritize it and I make time. So I would sacrifice something else. So if I do my batch cooking, I might sacrifice a whole Saturday morning, and I cook for about 2 or 3 weeks. And that's what I did before the term started. So we are in the 3rd week of school now. I have batch cooked for like half a day, but I've had food for the last 3 weeks. I had lunches for every single day. I maybe just made a snack here and there, but my main dish is in the fridge. So you need to make time. And I guess it's what is important to you, what is your priority, because we all have different priorities. To me, it is food for my that is my first thing. I make sure that everyone is fed properly and they have everything they need around their health. That's important. But then I had the eventuality that where health was really important. And lots of times, unfortunately, people realize that they need to cook from scratch and look after their health when something happens.
Yeah, it is back against the wall, and we have to make life-changing decisions when we are not in our best place. So, but it's really kind of catching ourselves before we get there. And we talk about this quite a lot in other ways, but yeah, it is the priorities and what you're willing to let go of to make space and time for something that's really important. And if people didn't want to do batch cooking, they wanted to just make food that would last them maybe, 2 or 3 days, a couple of days lunches. There's, because some people do feel daunted by making huge batches of food that then, vats of food, if you like, that you put in the freezer. But there are other ways you can batch cook for shorter, as you said, for the next few days and mix and match things up.
So you can do your dinner. Let's say I'm having spaghetti bolognese tonight. Just make a double portion. So you cook for the family, and then half of it is just for next day. So you can do it that way. You can do that. Or you can obviously, there are some, you really need to go and hunt for it and do the effort. I'm just thinking yogurt. So I don't do low fat because they're not, especially for my children, because they just add sugar into it, as you know, to make up for the fat. And it's really, really, really difficult to get a healthy yogurt for children, which is without flavorings and things. But I really looked out for it, and I found a Danone that has the fruit on top. And I actually emailed them to ask them, can you tell me the flavoring in there? And it's all natural. So if you find those little gems, then that can make your preparation easier. So instead of making my own yogurt or making my own fruit coulis, I can buy Danone, because I know it's one. So it's also just knowing what is available in the market, because it is getting a lot better. And there are actually snacks and things that you can get now, which is relatively healthy with only a few ingredients in it. The other one off the top of my head is the Nature's Valley bars. They're actually not too bad. So look out for those things that would make your life easier.
Yeah, and there are definitely. I think some of the, I think I've come across the same yogurts. I'm not sure actually if it's Danone, but yeah, things that are as simple as possible in looking at ingredients. And I'm really glad you said that about batch cooking, because so many people do get put off by making things on that. But some foods like dals are particularly well, or curries do particularly well to batch cook and freeze. So it is worth doing, because it saves me a huge amount of time. And I just think that repetition of doing things, if you can just do it in one go. Another thing we do, actually, my sister does much better than I do, but I do on a smaller scale to her, is make a massive vat of curry sauce. And she then does we call it a tadka, which is basically flavoring the oil. And you flavor the oil differently according to what you're going to cook. Mm-hmm. So she will just do that according to the food that she's going to make with it, but just keep the sauce, onion, the kind of chili, garlic and ginger, keep all of those things consistent. And then whatever she's going to make, she'll flavor a small amount of oil for whatever dish she's going to make for that. So, because actually making a curry sauce is the biggest thing. It takes so long to cook those onions down and cook the tomato down. So that's another really good shortcut that it's not necessarily a shortcut, but it is if you are willing to give some time, 2 hours to just cook this food down and do the onions and the tomatoes.
And that helps you. It's like having like a a stock cupboard of
Yes,
something
it is.
that you just use all the time. Another thing is, if you do you don't really see it as batch cooking, so plan your dishes. So in an hour I can do a chili, a spaghetti bolognese, and a lasagna in 1 hour. And I literally timed myself because the basis is the same. So if you plan your things, that you do the similar ingredients, then you can literally get out a couple of dishes or a couple of meals within a really short time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
yeah, or you can do a chicken curry, a chicken pie, and let's think what else. A chicken, like a cottage, almost like a cottage pie, but a chicken. You can do all of that also together because your basis is the same. For all of them, you're going to fry onions, you're going to fry off your chicken, you're going to add some vegetables, and then just towards the last bit, you vary it. Obviously, the way you make curry is very different to what I do because I don't have that knowledge, but if you plan things and work with the same main commodity, then you will be able to get out more dishes in a shorter amount of time.
That is a wonderful tip. I like that. I've not really thought about that, and actually planning like that. I don't cook chicken, but I'm just thinking about how we could, have to put some thought into that, because I like that idea of doing, utilizing my hour. Because I try and do that if I'm chopping salad for the evening. Okay, we'll chop some extra for tomorrow's lunch and things like that. But yeah, just wherever you can, replicating. Oh, Elna, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for all these tips and inspiration, and just giving us these really creative ideas of using our time more effectively and efficiently. So Elna, I have a question to ask you that's not related to cooking and lunchboxes. So you are about to launch your book, but for you to get to where you are today, what would you say your superpowers are?
Oh my goodness, I thought about that. My superpowers. I think my superpower is to be able to multitask and
I knew
just
you was
do
going to say
loads of things.
that.
I mean, sometimes it is more of a curse than a blessing that you can do loads of things, but I do manage to fit in lots of things into a short time. I went to boarding school, and there you're quite regimented, so you learn to do lots of things in a short amount of time. So I'm thinking my superpower is just to be able to do something in a short time and to be innovative. I reckon, I think I'm quite innovative. To give you an example, I wanted to make a chicken schnitzel. I didn't have breadcrumbs, I didn't have bread, but I had couscous. So I hydrated the couscous, cooled it down, and used the couscous as my breadcrumbs around my chicken.
Fantastic. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I think, yes, it's being creative and within reason, but just being able to do a lot in a short amount of time. It does go along with lots of stress, and my husband and my children do stay out of my way sometimes.
That is brilliant. Thank you. And how can anybody get in touch with you if they want to find out more about your book and the work you do?
Okay, so I've got my website is www.elnetteparsons.com. I am on Facebook. There's not many Elnettes around, so Elnette Parsons, you'll find me on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. My email address is info@elnetteparsons.com. And yes, my book is out on the 30th, and I am going to start doing more food videos. Versa? Have we disappeared? So I'm doing more food videos. So anyone who wants to learn about cooking and batch cooking, they can get in touch with me that way. I don't know, something happened, but thanks for listening, everyone. And yes, if you want to get into touch with me, just look me up on social media. And my book is out on the 30th. If anyone is interested, just let me know.